What's going on, everybody? King of Dragons 5000 here, coming at you with another figure review. Today we'll be having a look at the Hasbro Star Wars Black Series store exclusive General Grievous. Here we do have General Grievous in the packaging. Really excited I have this figure in hand. So what we're going to do now is take a little break, get him open up, and then we'll have a better look at the figure inside. So stay tuned, everyone. And so here we have General Grievous posed and out of the packaging. Before we take a look at the figure, let's actually take a look at what he comes with. Grievous does, of course, come with his cape, which is a pretty okay accessory. It doesn't fit on him properly, and it's kind of thick, and it does house all 4 lightsabers, which I do like. But, like I said, it is a little bit too thick. It's not accurate. It doesn't have the logo in the back, so that is a little bit unfortunate. Grievous, of course, does come with 4 different lightsabers. We do get 2 different colors. We have 2 green, 2 blue, and all 4 handles on the lightsabers are different, so I do like that. And then, of course, Grievous does come with his blaster, which does fit in either of his hands. Other than that, General Grievous here doesn't come with any other accessories, although I don't know what more you would want him to come with, because it's General Grievous. Probably a Mangan guard, but hopefully down the line we'll get one. But anyway, with that out of the way, let's take a closer look at General Grievous. And so here we have a closer look at General Grievous, and I have him standing at full height. His height will be manipulated as you have him pose, and that's with any figure. Most of the time we saw him crouched down in the movie, but right now I have him standing full height, so I do want to point that out. Having a look at Grievous's mask here, you can see they did a really good job sculpting it. I'm really happy with the way it came out. You can see the little silver bits right here on his face, the little I want to say those are microphones, but I know they're not. But they do look really good. They did an exceptional job with his eyes. As you can see, he does have those piercing yellow eyes coming through the mask, and that looks really cool. You can see some of his flesh tone underneath the mask. It is a little bit glossy for my taste. Maybe the eyes should be the only thing glossy. But it's still a really cool little thing. And he does have some wear and tear on his mask, which does look really good. You can see we have some more wear and tear right here on the sides, which they did a good job painting. We have some silver accents right here on the side of his mask. Going on to his neck, you can see all the little inner workings of his neck. You can see the little tubes coming down, the little voice box. I think that was his voice box. I'll have to go back and check the visual dictionary, but I want to say that that is his voice box. Overall, looking at it, I do want to point out that they didn't glue anything on this figure right, and that's an issue I've seen with so many other General Grievouses, is that his chest plate and neck piece, they're not quite glued on properly. You can see there's overlap. There's supposed to be separation here. Right here is the center, and you can see the neck piece is off to the left a little bit, and it does throw off the look of the figure. Now, I did try to move it back into its proper place, but it is glued down, unfortunately, so unless I want to heat this up and try popping it off, it's going to take a long time getting that fixed. Same with his chest plates. It is unfortunate, but let's just talk about the detailing on it, which is pretty accurate to how it was in the movie. We do have a little bit of wear and tear right here. We have some scuffs, some scratching, probably from a blaster bolt. I would have liked to see some of this go throughout his, bits and pieces, because as it stands, he's relatively clean. There's a few spots of silver here and there, but he's pretty much clean, and that's something I really don't like. You can see right here there's a little crack that they could have painted. He has a lot of detail. They sculpted detail in this guy surprisingly well. The only thing is there's no paint, no highlights to bring that out. Only right here in the front and here in the mask, and it sucks because all that detail gets lost, and it's something that I really wish they would highlight a little better. You can see his little shoulder plate here. Looks really good. His arm comes out really good. Now, I do want to point out that he has a lot of unique engineering just because of his design, and we'll go over that on articulation, but just based on how he looks, I think it's pretty accurate to the movie. You can see he even has a little bit of silver right here on his knuckles, so that looks really good. Going on to his lower abdomen here, you can see some of that silver paint that I was talking about. On his legs, they did more of that silver scuffing, but again, they only did it to the front. The back of Grievous is relatively clean. I'm not a fan of a clean Grievous, although they did a really good job with the color they chose. It's a really nice either bisque or bone color, which is how I pictured Grievous. I never pictured Grievous in all white, believe it or not. And again, they did a really good job sculpting, but all this detail is lost, unfortunately. And I don't know the proper shade that they went with dry brushing, because if it was black, I would have done that myself. But you can see a lot of detailing just got lost on this figure, and it is a little bit unfortunate, seeing as how Hasbro took the extra mile to sculpt so much detail in this guy. They could have made all this smooth and called it a day, but you can see some little nicks and dings here. It really does make me sad there's no way to actually bring out that detail without paint. Having a look at his feet, unfortunately he doesn't have any peg holes, so if you were planning on standing him on a peg, that's not going to happen. But he does stand pretty well, and depending on how you have him pose with his lightsabers depends on how well his stance is. But anyway, that's Grievous's detail for you guys, so let's actually compare him to a few other figures you may have in your collection. And so here we have General Grievous posed next to a DC Multiverse Superman and a Marvel Legends Cyclops. Here we have General Grievous posed next to a WWE Elite Scale figure and a Mezco 1/12 Collective Popeye the Sailor Man. And finally, here we have General Grievous posed next to Kylo Ren, who is about the size of your standard Black Series figure, and you can see Grievous is a little bit on the short side. Grievous should actually be a little bit taller. It's not a big deal when you get him all posed up, but just something to point out that Grievous is a little bit on the short side. So with that out of the way, guys, let's actually take a look at Grievous's articulation. Now, I do have one of his arms detached, because we'll go over this with both arms in a little bit, but for starters, he does have a ball joint in the head. He can look up slightly, he can look down, he can turn left and right, and he can tilt his head pretty well. He does have a ball joint down here where his neck connects, although it's not the loosest fit, and it's a little bit stiff on mine, and I am worried that turning it might end up tearing that peg, so I am a little bit worried about that. Moving on to his arms, it's really interesting how they engineered his arms. He actually has a ball joint right here at the shoulder, so we do get some up and down movement right there. A little bit of in and out, which works really good. And it does swivel all the way around, so that's really good. His shoulders are on ball hinges, so they do go out. When you have his arms joined together, you do lose some of the articulation here. Pretty much with his arms combined like this, his arms only go out, and they bend inward. You can't have them bend outward, unfortunately, and we don't get any articulation here in the wrist. When you separate his arms, that's where all this articulation actually comes into play. He still has that swivel joint right here at the shoulder, but each of his arms is independently on ball joints, so you can move his arms all the way around if you want. You can move them back and forth. You can split them up like that, and you can see they both have that ball joint, so that works really good. They both do spin up here at what would be his bicep. He has a single bend in the elbow, which you can see it works really good. You can see that rotation at the bicep piece right here. He also does have rotation here at the forearm, which does account for the swivel at the wrist too. So unfortunately, we don't get a wrist swivel. We only get this forearm swivel. And let me show it right here, because I think I was out of frame. But that does swivel around. And again, nothing in the wrist, so that is a little bit unfortunate. With his arms detached, we of course get more articulation. With them attached, we lose articulation, but we keep aesthetic, so it just depends on how you want to have your Grievous pose. He does have a ball joint here in the torso, so he does rock forward about that far. Only goes vertical right here, so he's standing straight up. Does have some tilt, as well as some really decent rotation. Legs do kick forward all the way up, which is pretty impressive. They kick back only about that far because they do get hindered by this little back plate on him. They go out only to about that far because they are on a ball joint, and we do get a little bit of rotation on that. No swivel at his thigh here, unfortunately. He does have double bend in the knee, which you can see that works really well. Double knee joint on Grievous is exceptionally well. He does have hinge right here where his ankle would be, so that goes forward and goes back. And then we get rotation right here. Unfortunately, his foot isn't on a hinge, and I think if his foot was on a hinge, he'd stand a little bit better. But as it stands, I still really like the articulation here on Grievous. So what we're going to do now is get him posed for my final thoughts, and then we'll wrap up this review. And so here we have General Grievous posed for my final thoughts, and as you can see, with all 4 of his lightsabers in hand, it actually makes a really good display piece, and I am really glad I have General Grievous here in my collection. Unfortunately, I don't have an Obi-Wan for him to fight, which is probably the one thing I am a little bit sad about, but as a standalone figure, I think Grievous here is an exceptionally well done figure. The engineering on his arms is really done well, although I would have liked to see some swivel and maybe some hinges on the wrist, seeing as how small his arms are. I can kind of see why Hasbro did forego the articulation in the wrist. However, I do feel like this Grievous is a little bit undersized. I think Grievous should be a little bit taller, and that's something that they could have taken into consideration. Maybe if he did have that extra height, they could have thrown in some swivel in the wrist. I don't know, I'm just guessing. But as it stands, I think Grievous is a must-have for any Star Wars fan, especially if you're a fan of the prequel trilogy, which I am a fan of Star Wars, and I just had to have this Grievous in my collection. If you are looking for General Grievous, he is at specialty shops such as comic book stores and GameStop, ThinkGeek. So if you are looking for Grievous, do check your ThinkGeek, GameStops, and local comic book stores. I was lucky enough to pick up my General Grievous from Black Sheep Comics for about $30, so huge shout out to the good folks of Black Sheep Comics for getting this out to me so I could review it for you guys. If you are a fan of the prequel trilogy, like I said, this is a must-have figure in your collection, especially if you've been collecting the Black Series ever since the beginning, so you have an Obi-Wan for him to fight. With that being said, guys, I'm KingofDragons 5000. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel, go check out all my other action figure reviews, as well as all my other Star Wars videos. Hopefully you find them informative. As always, if there's a figure you would like to see me review, let me know down in the comments, and if it fits in my collection, I'll definitely have a look at it. Until next time, guys, I'll see you later. Take care, everyone.